You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I Am Refocused Radio. Once again, we are here today, and just like any other time, we have another show. We have a true honor talking to Kristin Casey. She is the author of a new book, Casey Dancer. First and foremost, thank you for your time being on with us today. How you doing?
Hi, Shamaya. I'm good.
Tell us a little bit about what inspired you to write this book, because we know you had another book, Rock Monster. What was some of the things that prompted you to say, you know what, I have some more to say?
Thanks for asking. So Rock Monster is mostly about addiction and dependency and a codependent relationship I had with a guitar player for the Eagles, Joe Walsh. And it ends with the story of how I got sober. So obviously, that's kind of the beginning of something. And I wrote the second book because once you get sober, well, that's great. But then you have to kind of clean up the wreckage of your past. And like for most people, mine was in every area from career to finances to my personal health. But more than anything, I was really concerned with how incredibly lonely I was and wanting to find love and be able to date and have companionship and of course have sex. You know, I was a young and healthy woman but I wanted a relationship and I wanted to find love, and I had absolutely no idea how to do that. I had no skills and I had a huge fear of intimacy getting in my way. And it's the same story that most people in sobriety go through, especially if, like me, they were drinking and using drugs from an early age, and you simply don't learn those skills about how to be authentically intimate with someone. And so I had to kind of put myself out there and just make every mistake in the book, dating every unavailable man I could find and every married man or emotionally unavailable man, and just make every mistake in the book and get a couple things right along the way, and eventually learn those really vital skills that will help you have healthy relationships. And that's just how to be vulnerable, how to be authentic, and how to set good boundaries. And so it's mostly a book about learning to overcome fear of intimacy, told through a series of anecdotes in my life and how I did it in my really first 10 years of sobriety. And I feel like I have a mission sort of to parlay my experience through recovery with others who are going through the same thing. And that was the impetus to write the book.
In on sobriety, do you believe or do you think that society still kind of misunderstands what it really looks like and feels like?
I do think so. I mean, I think we've gotten to the point where we recognize it as a disease. It is one that is sort of self-induced in a lot of people. You know, it's not something that you're automatically born with, that there's no way to avoid. But we do tend to stigmatize it to a degree, and we don't really understand how difficult it can be to get out of that place. You know, when I got sober, the 12-step program was really the only thing out there, and it did work for me. Thank God it worked really well for me. And thankfully, there are other methods now, a number of other methods, everything from ibogaine to certain types of therapy and different types of programs that people use that aren't necessarily spiritually based. So there are a lot of options. But I think that the average person who's not and never been addicted to drugs or alcohol doesn't really understand, psychologically speaking, where the impetus to overuse comes from. And I think we don't still appreciate to this day how much childhood trauma affects us throughout our entire lives. And so when I write my books, like in my first book, I talked a lot about my relationship with my mother and how challenging that was and how painful it was and how that drove me to drinking in a way that sort of determined the next 15 years of my life. In the second book, I speak a little bit about my relationship with my father and how the good and the bad of it, and how that helped determine a little bit how I was going to relate to men for the rest of my life. Because that's one thing we don't really recognize. Our relationship with our parents can determine how we interact and attach to, either healthy or in an unhealthy way, to our partners, our romantic partners later in life. This is something that the psychological community understands, and there are many books written on it, attachment theory and those type of topics. But the general public doesn't really get it. The general public still doesn't know that your relationship with your parents and everything you go through in childhood almost dictates a lot of how you're going to behave and react later in life. And you can change that. That's the other thing. You can change how you react. And so that's, I think, a lot of the themes in my books is a lot about that.
Once again, we're talking to Kristin Casey, all about her book, Casey Dancer. You can get it right now. When you look at how you were also an intimacy coach as well, did that professional background have influence in how you wanted to write the book?
Yeah, it very much did. I realized in my late 40s that it was time to sort of get out of the stripping and the sex work and that arena, that I'd had a wonderful career, but I wanted to parlay that into a more healing modality, a more traditionally healing modality. So I became a certified sexuality counselor and used that to work as a dating and intimacy coach. And it was incredibly rewarding work. And I worked solely with men, everything from helping them learn how to date in healthier ways to learn how to overcome performance anxiety and social anxiety, and even sometimes manifesting as sexual dysfunction, because sometimes when you're anxious, it's going to affect you physically, not just mentally or emotionally. And that work was so rewarding. And I watched so many men overcome issues and go on to have healthy dating lives and healthy relationships that I thought, well, maybe I can use my experience as a coach and my experience overcoming my own intimacy issues to hit a wider audience by writing a book about it in a way that's fun. I mean, I think Casey Dancer, it's not really like, you're not going to find it on the psychology shelves or the self-help shelves. You're going to find it in memoir. And it's a fun book about a series of stories of my dating life and how I did it myself. So it's told in like a story form, which I think is just a funner way to learn about that kind of stuff.
You mentioned trauma earlier in the conversation. Do you believe healing is ever finished, or is it just another level of awareness every time you share your story?
That's very well said. I would definitely say it's another level of awareness. I would love to feel at 57 that I've healed all of my past traumas, and I am in a wonderful relationship now that's the healthiest I ever imagined I could be in, and more so. And yet I also see that sometimes I still have those little issues that come up, those little trust issues, or, I think the best that you can hope for is that you get to a place where you can recognize when you're being triggered or recognize when your old patterns are flaring up. And you can say, hey, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to react that way. But, we're human and our neural pathways get set and we can override them, but they're still in there. It's just a matter of degrees, and you can get to a place where you have control over your behavior and you can decide if you're going to react or you're going to respond. And so I don't think healing is ever really done unless maybe you're some kind of highly enlightened monk living in a Himalayan cave somewhere. But then again, if you're a monk living in a cave, you're not dating, and so you're not getting triggered the same way the rest of us are.
When you look at freedom and you think about this book, its story of resilience, what does freedom look like for you today?
For me, freedom is that thing about not being controlled by my patterns, my neural pathways, my triggers. It's that thing about being able to recognize my feelings as they're coming up, where they're coming from, and do I want to respond in a way that's healthy and positive, or do I want to respond in a way that's childish and fearful? And freedom comes from being able to control your behavior and understand your emotions. And that's just a lot of introspection. I think a lot of it is, I've had a lot of therapy in my life, but sometimes just reading other people's stories and paying attention to what the people around you are going through, and you can relate to it and kind of apply it to your own life. Just self-awareness and introspection, those two things can go a very long way in creating personal freedom for a person.
Once again, talking to our guest, Kristin Casey. You can get her book. It's available right now. Casey Dancer, available anywhere you get a book. My last question for you is, if you had opportunity to look at your youngest self, what would you tell her?
That's a good question. I would definitely tell her, you don't realize it, but you're manifesting every minute of the day. When you're focusing on dark feelings, dark thoughts, fear, negativity, you're attracting that kind of energy into your life. And when you focus on opportunity, positive qualities, hope instead of fear, then you attract that kind of energy into your life. I think you're manifesting every minute, so try to focus on the light, not the darkness, because I spent too much of my life focusing on the darkness.
Once again, I want to say to our guest, Kristin, like always, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Shemaya. Great talking to you.